Statistical analysis plans. So statistical analysis plans are something that you will encounter in every clinical trial. So we'll talk a little bit about generally what they are, why are they needed, when it is written, and what are the general components of an SAP. Perhaps very obviously, SAP stands for Statistical Analysis Plan. And there are a number of reasons why you need to have an SAP. The ICH guidelines call for one. Funding agencies also usually call for one. Sample size estimation requires at least an idea of the analytical method you'll use. You can't possibly know what covariates to collect unless you plan your models in advance. And you also won't know how to collect your endpoint unless you know how you're going to analyze it. And then what about if you have staff changes? So if your statisticians change, if your data managers change, if faculty change, or if program managers change, they'll need to have an understanding of the purpose of the data collection, and that's where the statistical analysis plan comes into play. So the biggest reason why you need an SAP is because you will need one. There will be so much to do when it comes time for analysis, and that can be for interim analyses, for DSMB reports, and for the primary analyses and all of the abstracts, posters, and papers that come with your trial. You will also need to delegate analyses if you have that type of staff for a larger trial. And that also helps when you need to report back to the funding agency. This will serve as a checklist for clinicaltrials.gov as well, in terms of completing all the analyses that you had planned for. So when do you write the statistical analysis plan? Ideally, before you start collecting data. In practice, before the blind is broken. It will be somewhere in between there. And in fact, most of the time you will get to writing the SAP once the protocol is accepted and finalized. So what is an SAP? That's a very excellent question. Stop the video for a moment and make a list of potential headings that you feel would be in a statistical analysis plan. Think about what would take you from protocol to publication. So think more broadly than just the primary endpoint analysis and consider anything that deals with the data or will need to be assessed utilizing the data that you have. We need to think of clinical trials from start to finish, and the SAP should include anything that affects the data for statistical analysis. So data as a whole, data by variable, data monitoring, data types, data analysis. You need to define the data sets that you have. What is your intention to treat or modified intention to treat? What's per protocol? What are the safety analyses? And what are the secondary analyses? Considering the data by variable. What is your data dictionary? You should actually have a draft data dictionary once you build your data collection forms. What are the types of variables that you will have? Categorical and continuous. Of course, under categorical, you have dichotomous, trichotomous, ordinal, nominal. Under continuous, you can actually have things like blood pressure and height, but you may forget about where those count variables fall in. Are they following in under categorical? So you're counting the number of times something happens, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus, or are you actually capturing the number of events? And do you have time to event information? So what will be done also if those variables are missing? Speaking of missing data, is there a QA/QC plan? Do you have monitoring analyses planned for quality assurance and quality control of your data? That should also be included in your statistical analysis plan. For your analysis, don't forget about descriptive statistics, endpoints, covariates, models, assumptions, tests, alpha levels, and any alternatives or multiple testing adjustments that you need to make in your analyses. Think about best case and worst case scenario with your data. Think about your data presentation and programming. You need to have draft tables and figures, especially for any interim analyses that will be planned or regular monitoring of your data. What programming will be used, and will there be validation programming? So will you be required to have independent validation of your endpoint or any other analyses, and that should be planned in advance? Who is going to do that and when that will happen? Have the PI or staff make sure the SAP contains every planned analysis in the protocol. Review for effort required versus what was included in the grant award. So make sure that the PI understands how much effort is going into the day-to-day management of your data that impacts the statistical analysis plan. Most of that during the trial process will be data monitoring, but that does directly affect your statistical analysis plan, particularly endpoint monitoring. And then be realistic. Don't promise too much work for too little time. We would love to analyze everything, but this is not possible. So as you are writing your protocol and preparing your data collection instruments, plan your analyses in advance and take a look at realistically your staff. If it is just you and an additional statistician, will you have the capabilities to do all of this work? If you won't, and oftentimes the statistical budget is cut after funding, then you need to have a realistic conversation with the PI and the funding agency to either get more money or to reduce the amount of information that you will be responsible for collecting and analyzing. Having a statistical analysis plan, having a realistic understanding of how much time each of those analyses takes, goes a long way towards getting you the budget and the staff that you need, or else reducing the amount of analysis from each study. The assignment for this section is to work with your team and write a brief outline of your SAP for the primary analysis in your new grant. Include the alpha, the tests and the methods, any covariates you may analyze either after an unadjusted analysis or a priori in an adjusted analysis, the programs that you plan to use for analysis, and the data set definitions for those analyses. You'll combine this assignment with the listing of the DSMB tables that you would have. Both of those will be due as a team assignment on April 20th.